As I was preparing the show today and going through my, well, Rush Limbaugh calls it his colossal stack of stuff. I can't do that. It would obviously violate some sort of copyright. But I have a stack of paperwork as thick of an old fashioned as an old fashioned phone book. Some of you may still remember what those happen to be. I don't think there are many of those out there any longer. 7 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I came along this morning against a great many writers talking about guns and gun ownership in the United States of America and the unrealistic expectations of the American left that they are somehow going to come and snatch up all of the firearms that people own and somehow make all of us a lot safer in our lives. And it shows you that we aren't getting closer in this country. The left continues to spin out of control into outer space, into the depths of loony land, and the American right is digging in too as well, and it's not moving closer to the center. So we have this divide. A lot of it is a regional divide, as we well know. I was talking with Grant Loebs off the air yesterday, and I said, of all of the mass shootings in this country that have taken place since I think it was 1950, three states have not had any of them, and they are all considered red states, and they are Idaho, Wyoming, and North Dakota. And I brought that up. We were talking about that during a segment off the air yesterday. Most of the mass shootings that have taken place in the United States have been in blue states, that is, states controlled by Democrats with draconian gun laws, which often run counter to the founding principles of this country, and usually end up, if they're challenged, as a setback in the Supreme Court for the American left. But that does not stop the devil. The devil is relentless and just keeps coming forward. Some of the things that we're working on this morning, we're going to have a representative from Dr. Jonathan Tripp's office joining us in studio in just a few minutes. Remember, Dr. Tripp and his family are going on a mission trip to Nicaragua this summer, and they are looking for people to drop off toiletries at the office, which they're going to take as part of their mission and donate to the people living out in the jungle where they're going to be. You can drop these toiletries off if you feel like you'd like to contribute at Tripp Family Medicine, which is on Fillmore Street, directly across from the main post office in Twin Falls. And also, his boys are paying their own way on this trip. So they have to go out and mow a lot of grass, and they have to clean a lot of swimming pools and help people clean up a lot of garages and paint a lot of houses. So if you're looking for someone, and even when they come back from the trip, they're going to be willing to work throughout this summer. So I just wanted to share that with you as well. And we'll have some Q&A going on with one of the medical professionals in a few minutes, as well as some of your telephone calls too. If you have a question or comment for the doctor or one of the physician assistants or the nurse practitioner, whoever we have in studio today, this is your opportunity to actually get a question answered about your health. But some of the other things, too, we're talking about this morning. Wendy Davis is coming by from Parks and Recreation. No, not the TV show, but from Twin Falls Parks and Recreation. We'll talk a little bit about some of the summer events going on in city parks, some of the things that they're involved with. But also, it's a little late in the year to think about reserving space, I would assume. A lot of people line up especially at City Park, for special events. But she'll talk about how that process works, because in the future, if your church group or your club has something that they'd like to do and they'd like to find space for it, obviously the city has space available, and she'll walk you through the process. That's coming up in the next hour of the program. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, please stick around. I have this from the writer's name is T. Beckett Adams. Love that name, T. Beckett Adams. The T is, I don't know what it stands for. I'm going to assume Thomas Becket. There you go. That makes sense. Washington Examiner. Did you see this on the internet? A liberal publication called Vox published a graphic last week, and it went out on Twitter as well, claiming that the AR-15 can be outfitted with a grenade launcher, so that if you're a bad guy, you can really create a lot of mayhem. And this is Vox's argument for banning the AR-15. And so the writer, Mr. Beckett, says, it showed how the popular rifle can be outfitted with a 37 millimeter attachment. Failed to mention, though, that using the add-on for anti-personnel purposes is illegal. That would mean, mining it, or a grenade, if you will. And that grenades are outlawed for purchase or sale to the general public. So they've already confiscated the grenades. I guess they realize when they say that this could happen, it must be an admission on the left's part that bad guys are still going to get their hands on weapons of mass destruction no matter what we do. Well, The writer goes on to say the so-called explainer website relies on a graphic from the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, which refers to the 37 millimeter attachment as a, quote, grenade launcher, unquote. And guess what it really is? It launches flares. If you're out hunting, let's say, you're out in the back country and you somehow get lost or you break an ankle, you step in a chuck hole and you break an ankle, and you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you need help, this little device will allow you to pop a flare into it. You can send the flare up and people can come find you, and it could save your life. And yet liberals are looking at this thing and thinking, aha, that must be a grenade launcher. We really need to ban that AR-15 now. Well, once again, it just shows you that if they would bother to ask a few questions and do a little research, they wouldn't end up with all of this egg on their faces. But to them, it doesn't matter. You know, the fact that you say, well, that you dumb, well, I almost said something I shouldn't say, you dumb people. You're not helping your arguments out when you do these things. You keep calling it an assault rifle, giving the impression it's a machine gun. It is not. Machine guns have been banned now in this country for 82 years. From public use, that is. Some people can still go test fire them. The great conservative leader, founder of the Eagle Forum, the woman I interviewed some years ago on the radio, too, as well, she's got to be well into her 90s, Phyllis Schlafly. She got her start in life. She worked her way through college test firing machine guns in World War II. That's a tough woman. But here you go again. It just shows you that the left, they get it wrong, and then they just keep doubling down. And no matter how foolish they look in the arguments that are being made. It's 61. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're coming up on 8:14. I have a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. Just remember, when guns are outlawed, only outlaws in and out of government will have guns. Well, that really sums it up, because the final step to dictatorship historically has been to confiscate the guns under whatever pretense it's been. And so soon as and they're, of course, working behind the scenes to work on the ammunition and all these different aspects of it. And like I say, trying to convince the public that there's a machine gun in every, you pick up a handgun and it's a machine gun all of a sudden, and it's just ridiculous. But criminals will always get guns. They can make guns. I mean, it's not that hard to do. But anyway, that is the bottom line, is that dictatorships, and we're not that far from it, folks, as we can see the handwriting on the wall looking historically. 20 of the most prominent nations in the world weren't destroyed by invading armies. They were destroyed from within. And we're being destroyed, of course, with this culture bringing all these immigrants and refugees in here that will not assimilate, regardless of what happened here in Twin Falls. The bottom line is migration, these people needs to cease until we know what the heck they're up to, like Trump has said.
Yeah. And the reason I laughed when you mentioned criminals in government, too, Washington Times yesterday had a huge piece, investigative piece, about how the IRS has armed itself, how the IRS has become an army unto itself. So why does the federal tax agency need to be outfitted with military grade weapons, as the left would call them, unless
the EPA and all these government bureaus all have their own arsenal now. They're not only unconstitutional now; they've constituted enough to justify their unconstitutional acts by having their own mini army to go out and enforce their unconstitutional laws.
And that is, thank you for the call, to eat out the public sustenance. And I got that right, I guess. I think I got part of the word in there. But to oppress you, ultimately to oppress you. This is all part of a much bigger grand plan here that's going on. And of course, you've got the folks on the left who never like to let a good crisis go to waste, as one of the leftist heroes once said. You're next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. They're not wasting their time by doubling down, because there are people on their side that believe every word that comes out of their mouth. Just like it's a military rifle. The military does not use an AR-15. And I love the last scenario I saw that said, let's stop drunk driving killing by taking cars away from sober people. It's the same scenario. So you're going to stop drunk drivers from killing people by taking the cars away from the people that don't drink at all. It's the same thing on a flip.
I
But
just saw Cal Thomas commentary where he said murder has been illegal since the first men walked the earth, but yet people still murder. How do they fully expect that they are going to legislate politeness in any culture?
yeah, well, yeah, and you need to ask yourself, why is it that guns are the only tool that is blamed for an act that's done by a human being? Every other act by a tool, there's something wrong with the person. They're after the guns. That is the only reason.
I thank you much for the call. Yeah, the whole notion that they can disarm you. And then that argument, well, it worked in Australia. Well, Australia didn't have a Second Amendment. We do. And actually, some of these laws being proposed by this crackpot Senator Murphy with a bad toupee out of Connecticut not only violate the Second Amendment, they will violate both the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. I saw some great reading on that this morning as well, but I'm sure Lefty doesn't want you to see that either. You're up next. We've got about a minute before the break.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. We can see how well the gun control works because England, which has one of the worst gun control laws on earth, that one guy got a gun over there and killed that representative, that woman.
Right. The member of Parliament, Cox was her name, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, thank you much for the call. Yeah, he stabbed her and he shot her. He likely the knife when he plunged it into her several times, killed her. The gun was just the coup de grace, but yet they're not talking about knife control, are they? Interestingly, there was one writer that I don't know how he slipped through the cracks of the editorial board at Vox. Vox, of course, published this silly graphic the other day, but a former editor of Wired magazine, who is a liberal, wrote in and said, I think you're being a little too harsh on the AR-15. He says, because I happen to own one. And he said, I live in rural Texas. Now, an AR-15 might not be your best self-defense if you live in a crowded neighborhood in a city. That's why you have pistols. But if you live out in the countryside, an AR-15 can be quite handy. If a bear is charging you or a moose is charging you or, you've got other predators out there that are natural predators, but even someone who thinks they can come conk you over the head because no one lives in the area and they can get away with it. This guy pointed out, he said, the reason that the AR-15 is such a successful weapon, or firearm, if you will, it's only a weapon when you point it at someone and use it. But he said it's because it's simple to use, and it saves you time. And seconds could be what saves your life. And he warned his fellow liberals. He said, you're barking up the wrong tree on this one if you think you're going to take this one away from people. Bill Colley with you. More on this subject coming up in just a couple of minutes on News Radio 1310, KLIX. You do understand that the people out there on the American left would never have the courage to actually go door to door and try to collect all of these firearms. But there have been efforts, and they've been ongoing for several years. We've heard a great deal about ammunition shortages. And the feeling is, well, you know what? All you got left then is a club. And they're fine with that. You can club someone to death all you want, But if you can have all the firearms you want, but you can't put anything in them. That seems to be the next step. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com, 824 and 63. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next.
Well, talk about gun control. I mean, when Obama pulled out of Iraq and we left billions and billions of dollars worth of our stuff over there, and I think the last guys that left on the airplanes out of Iraq had to leave all their weapons right there on the tarmac. The Marines or something, but 200 or 300 automatic weapons left for the terrorists, and they just went out and rounded up all the Christians and crucified them. And if we give up our guns, we can expect the same treatment in this country.
And a lot of that happened in Afghanistan too. It said, well, we'll turn the weaponry over to the Afghan police or army, and then the police and army just sold it off to the Taliban.
Yeah. So they're over there running around in our tanks, and everything else we have. A lot of that stuff's no doubt been shipped right back here to America to be used against us right here in this country by these people. America really ought to wake the hell up and see what's going on. That's just my feeling, though.
Hey, it's a good feeling. I thank you. I share it as well. I just wanted to pass along to people. We are looking at some temperatures again in the next few days in the 90-degree range. Is your air conditioner running? Ha, 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 ha. You better go catch it. No, really. If you want it to run well during the course of the summer, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric. Make sure the job is done right the first time and set yourself up for a great summer. You can see Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, or give them a call at 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers at Ramsey Heating and Electric. You're up next, and you're on the air.
I remember when Obama was running for president, he said something like, we need a domestic or national security force that's just as robust and strong as our military. Has he gone so far as to, I mean, is that where all these guns are going, to these wackadoo bureaucratic agencies? Is that what he's doing?
I think that's a pretty good point. It could well be. They've armed, even the Department of Education sent a SWAT team into a home in Oakland because they said that the homeowner was not sending his children to school. As it turns out, the guy had a legitimate reason and there were some other issues going on, but they sent in the SWAT team and, had the family down on the floor with their hands on their heads. This is the Department of Education. Really? I mean, can you believe that? They're doing that to the American people? Over at, I used to say redstate.com, but he left that. He's founded now the resurgent.com. Eric Erickson says, we need more guns and not less guns. He says if the Senate is serious about saving Americans, they should first defund Planned Parenthood, which chops up thousands of Americans a year and sells their body parts. Then they should pass national concealed carry reciprocity legislation and make it easier to actually buy firearms. Whether the left likes it or not, the genie is out of the bottle. And he mentions the situation in Australia and says, again, in these countries, they have no Second Amendment. The government is not going to save us, he writes, from terrorists. And he also says, the government cannot even save us from a robber at our home. But the police will not arrive on time for a terrorist or nut job intent on inflicting mass casualties. The gun control argument is premised on the lie that the government can and will protect us. The government did not protect the children in Connecticut or the men and women in Orlando or the soldiers in Chattanooga who are required to be unarmed, or the people in the theater in Colorado. I've got about a minute and a half left before the break. We've got, of course, Trip Family Medicine on the way at 8:30. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX.
The arrogance of our public servants is so unbelievable that we have countless examples of this. And you see, as long as they continue to get away with it, they're going to continue to do what they do. And it's just like the city council, the people at CSI. Forgive me. You get so mad you can't even say what you want to say, and it's just so damn sickening. And just like the gentleman said, well, people need to wake up. I've been saying that since 1998 or 89, I forget now, and I feel alone. Yeah, we need some help. I'll hang up. Thanks.
If you want evidence of what a welfare state does for people, where they get fat, happy, and can just put their feet up and watch a soccer all day long, look at England, where tomorrow they may decide to go along with a regulatory state, the behemoth called the European Union, instead of going back to being one of the most powerful countries in the world. Why? Because they don't have to get upset. They can just sit around and be on the dole all of their lives. Just very quickly before we get to the break. Smart gun. Mr. Obama's talking about smart gun technology. Yet, think about this for a moment. Courts are saying that people cannot be forced to swipe their phones and put their IDs. Some phones, in order to get into your cell phone, you have to have a password. Courts are saying that that's a violation of the Fifth Amendment, which says you cannot incriminate yourself. Well, the same argument could be said that having an ID to unlock your firearms could also result in much of the same argument in the courts. So once again, it's the end around by the Obama White House saying the Constitution be danged, we're going to go ahead and do as we please and force the American people to follow us straight to hell. We've got a break coming up. Trip Family Medicine, Better Health, coming up in just a few minutes on News Radio 1310 KLIX.